Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. On today's show, we have lighting industry veteran Marty Cole. That's right. We'll get into his biography a little bit in a second or two. But before we get there, we got to tell you a little bit about our friends over at Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com, Greg. Keep it easy, buddy.
That's right, and keeping it easy with traditional lighting. Now, that's something we're going to talk a little bit about today, so as a teaser for it, be ready. But HID ballasts, that's right, Keystone has them. Fluorescent ballasts, they've got it, and they've got a lot of them. A lot of other people have gone away from it, but Keystone has them, so be ready. Anytime you need that stuff, you can find them.
If you're a lighting distributor, come on. If you're a true lighting distributor, I mean, there's lighting distributors that only focus on project work and LEDs. But if you're a trench, I still sell a lot of legacy technology, man. All manner of things. I sold a whole bunch of low pressure sodium the other day. There you go. But if you need those ballasts, Keystone has amazing ballasts. I'm going to tell them right now. They're fantastic. I've been a Keystone distributor for years. So go to KEYSTONETECH.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. The easy folks. Light made easy. And of course, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. That's NAILD.org. Get associated. We've been talking about it for 4 years now. I don't even know if we're going to let you in anymore, put it that way. But for right now, welcome to the show, Marty Cole.
Thank you.
Say hi to Greg Garrett.
Hi, Greg.
There you go.
Hi, Marty. So you started this off right before we hit record here, and you said, all I did was ask a question, and now I'm on a podcast. Here's your question, and here's why you're on the podcast. Said, have you dealt with change in the availability of traditional lighting components in one of your podcasts? We've hinted at it. We've never really dove into it, and it's an awesome topic and something we're passionate about, so that's why you're here.
Now, you mentioned low-pressure sodium. I had a customer recently looking for some low-pressure sodium lamps and ballasts. Mm-hmm. And out of our traditional sources, couldn't find them. So we sent him some LED fixtures to replace them because who the hell wants low-pressure sodium?
I think a lot of people,
just not readily available.
A lot of people want it for the Kelvin temperature. So low pressure sodium is 2200 Kelvin.
For critters.
Yeah. And so a lot of
critters.
Yeah. We actually had a farm that one of our nailed vendors has very good low pressure sodium retrofit kits, Olympia Lighting actually. And
good to know.
You disconnect the ballast, you run the thing, and they were low Kelvin as well. And so that the customer really appreciated that. And so the farm was able to keep that low Kelvin temperature because they have animals in the fields that are near the barn, and it clearly bothers the high Kelvin temperature light clearly affects his barnyard animals or whatever the heck he's doing out there somewhere in Ontario. So there are reasons people like low pressure sodium. But talk to us a little bit more about this. I know, another guy that talks about this is, I'm forgetting his name. The musician we had on. Why can't I remember his name, Greg? Oh,
Tom Surzak.
Tommy, I love you, brother. Just right now in the middle of the show, Tom Surzak is another guy that talks a little bit of this. Tell us why you have concerns.
Concerns on
availability.
Ballast in general.
Yeah.
Now, we're both in the lighting world, but my lighting world is different than yours because I deal in hazardous locations. So things that go in refineries and chemical plants, grain elevators and stuff, so they don't blow up. So a standard ballast may not be suitable for one of my fixtures. I have different things to worry about in mine to maintain certain temperatures. So we've had cases where an emergency battery backup system for a fluorescent that was installed for about 2 years, they had a failure through a surge, not through the fixture. But the ballast no longer existed. It was a 347 volt ballast, and it just doesn't exist anymore. So we had to sell them an LED option that we did have. We had some people desperate to find some sodium ballasts. They're not around either. You might have them for your applications, but they may not be suitable for my part of the world. But we are seeing a huge decrease. And even in lamps, if you look at the lamps, the sales in lamps, you ever look at NEMA? Their statistics for lamps?
Yeah,
so they picked 2011 as a benchmark. And they said, okay, if we count the number of lamps we sold in 2011 as the
Baseline.
100% of lamps,
Yeah.
right? So now they're looking at, in 2020, they've gone down 68% in sodium in terms of lamp sales to 2020. They've gone down 82% in metal halide and 78% in mercury vapor. Who knew you even could buy mercury vapor anymore?
I got them in stock.
And similar reductions in I understand, but the trend in the industry is going down. You're keeping it for specific customers, but larger industrial distributors are serving the market that they have. And maybe on the commercial side, it's different, but certainly in the industrial, and certainly in the hazardous world, it's changed an awful lot. So we're seeing a lot of reductions in what's readily available. Somebody actually wanted us to pull apart fixtures that we've had in stock for 10 years so they could get a ballast out of us.
Sure.
It was
Yeah,
that
for sure.
bad in one case because they can't afford to be down.
Mhm.
Somebody doesn't get a ballast for 6 weeks in your world, in the commercial world or the residential world, okay, they have to wait. But in my world, it's a major problem for them. It's a safety issue.
Mhm.
So speaking about your world a little, Marty, how long have you been in lighting?
Ooh, long time. 70s, 80s.
Looks like 40 years.
So, yeah, about that. I've been in the hazardous end of it for about, I don't know, 30 odd years. So,
All hazardous. Okay.
yeah, but I started at Hubble doing other things, and I migrated into lighting, and then I went on the road selling lighting, and now I just do hazardous location stuff. So lots of things that occur in other parts of the lighting industry don't necessarily occur in the hazardous side. Even like your replacement lamps, you sell replacements for an incandescent. You used to sell those crappy compact fluorescents. Now you've got LED options,
Watch
but they
it
don't work in our world. They don't work in our world. You cannot use them
for sure.
because they're not safe in a hazardous area. Because when they fail, they don't fail quietly. They fail with a bit of a spark. That's enough to ignite a gas and cause an explosion. So we can't have those.
It's like the canary in the coal mine. Hazardous
Similar,
locations. Yeah. Like no, but I mean, yeah.
yeah.
But like hazardous, like what?
Canaries were unreliable.
Yeah. But I mean, like what you're saying is like so. For example, um, there the the legacy lamp market. So mercury vapor, low pressure sodium. Those would be pure legacy. And then you have like high pressure sodium and metal halide. It's getting very difficult to source metal halide, general metal halide lamps, and the
Right,
prices are going up astronomically actually on that
right.
technology. I
Yeah,
mean,
they are.
you can't get that like that stuff, and we service resupply for a lot of natural resource extraction and stuff like that in Ontario, and we have people
Mhm.
paying ridiculous prices for lamps. Um,
Yeah,
it's so, but you're saying like we're still able to find this stuff, but I don't see this going on for very long. I mean, I'm importing weird metal halide lamps from California, bringing them into Ontario, selling them for $100 a lamp. It's like
ooh,
for lamps that, you know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you would have paid $20 for, um,
yeah,
and selling them
and
one at a time, two at a time,
yeah, yeah.
so.
And then, we use a lot of hazardous industries in Canada, not so much in the U.S. because they're a little bit behind the things we do here. No harm to the Americans, but most of the petrochemical facilities used high pressure sodium, not because they like the color of the light. They used it because the lamp lasted longer
For
and the
sure.
lumen depreciation was less than mercury vapor.
Hmm.
You got more light and it lasts longer.
Hmm.
So a number of years ago, we got them to buy into using dual arc tube lamps.
Okay.
Dual arc tube high pressure sodium. So you have two arc tubes inside and they keep
Yeah.
flipping back and forth
Sure.
and they last about 44,000 hours.
Hmm.
And that worked out great for them
Yeah.
because how much does it cost you guys to change a light bulb in a commercial building?
Fluorescent
How
tube
much
like
to change
50
a lamp?
cents. 50 cents to change a
Well,
fluorescent tube.
sure, sure. In the hazardous area, because of what you have to go through to do this, it's upwards to $1,500 to change a lamp.
Sure. Yep.
So if you get something that lasts longer, you're going to buy into that. So they bought into dual arc tube lamps that are getting really hard to get because all the lamp guys have sold their businesses.
High pressure sodium was a very reliable technology, actually.
Absolutely.
Very reliable. And
Yeah.
it's easy to, once you understand a little bit of, or well, you start to understand how. Nobody can understand it now, but the people that know about how legacy lighting systems work, HID, understand the benefits of high pressure sodium in street lighting and hard applications. They're like old rock
Mhm.
stars; they never die; they only fade away. So
That's right.
um, I can totally see it. We've talked to other guys in the that work in that hazardous high temperature space, Greg. And I don't think LED can really penetrate into those spaces yet. What are your thoughts on that, Greg?
Yeah, I mean that's what I wanted to kind of ask Marty on his side because you have a lot more experience. I've been in maybe one or two facilities that you're talking about, and the times I have and I've ever talked about LED, uh, they don't care about the energy savings at all. Like there's no talk
No.
about energy savings is no, I don't care about it. I want it to work and last a long time. So LED can last a long time, but in the right environment, and a lot of times heat is
Right.
the issue.
Yep.
So, are you seeing that LEDs are getting made better, or will they ever get to the point where they can handle the heat that HIDs can?
They've come a long way. They're an awful long way. Originally, you'd be lucky to get a 40-degree ambient out of them. Um,
Right.
you'd be lucky to get that. Sometimes it was lower than that. Certainly in the Middle East, you couldn't use them because their daytime temperatures are just too high, and add process temperatures on top of that, and there's not a chance in hell. But now they're up to 65 degrees C, which is workable in many applications. We had one recently where my only option was to sell them high pressure sodium and with a remote ballast
Mhm.
because the ambient temperature is
Yes.
103 degrees C.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the
So
remote ballasting.
nothing
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
It was, you couldn't put the ballast in the fixture because you'd fry the ballast. So you had to get it remote from the area and find something that'll get you far enough away from the igniter. Find an igniter that'll work at 103 degrees. And it's a challenge. That was the only solution. We actually haven't completed that. We're still struggling with even creating a fixture from an old file
Now,
to
when you
make
say
sure we can sell it somewhere.
133 degrees, what are you talking, Celsius or Fahrenheit here?
Celsius,
Yeah, that's
Celsius.
crazy, dude.
That's
That's
straight up
wow.
temperature.
Yeah. So, but
So we encounter those things,
all the time, and
and many industries do.
yeah,
Put them in a dryer, put them in a kiln. Somebody wants to light in a kiln. What do you sell them? Incandescent.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
They want instant light. That's the only thing that'll work is an incandescent.
Hmm.
So LED won't do everything. It just can't do everything because otherwise we'd have them in the oven in your stove in your house.
Yeah.
No, because it won't
The
last.
a lot of people don't understand the fun. Like, if you actually came into this room and I could do it, dropped a 1,000-watt metal halide ballast on the table. A lot of people in the lighting industry would have their minds blown. Actually, like there's a lot of people that have never tried to pick up one of those things. Like these are
Yeah.
massive copper coils. Like they don't look
Yep.
anything like a electronic driver or ballast. These things are
No.
they look like they belong in a hazardous environment. When you look at them, you're like, that looks like it's built for something crazy, you know?
Right.
Um, so the remote mounting. Like I don't know, like some of these remote mounting I've seen in factories, the ballast can be remoted like 100 feet away from the lamps or more sometimes.
Metal halide and mercury. Yes, and I've seen that.
Yes.
We did a oil production facility from plant oil, and all of their ballasts were in one room, and all their lights were in the factory area
Yeah.
um, because it was warm, and they had to go to LED that would take the heat and ditch all their bays of hundreds and hundreds of ballasts. But sodium, you have to be igniter's got to be within a few feet of the fixture,
Mm.
a few feet of the lamp, or it just doesn't work right.
Mm.
Now you can, with the right wire sizing, you can get the core, the copper coils and all that stuff. You can move those out of the way. But the igniter's got to be pretty close. Capacitor can be a long way away too, just not the igniter. So in this solution, it was find an igniter that ran just above the ambient temperature and put it in a separate box because you don't want the lamp heating it up more than it has to be. And an empty fixture with just a socket for the lamp. And then you could be a
How
100
uh,
feet out away from the core and coil.
how far can you remote mount LED?
Well, they have to be fairly close to the LED. The driver needs to be close to it, the LED itself.
Mhm.
You don't want to be miles away from it, and you're not helping anything. It's not. You can get the drivers to be good for a temperature, but the LED itself might not be good for that temperature.
So
LEDs
there
don't
are
like heat.
yeah, there are applications like, and that's exactly where I saw this was they had 400 watt metal halide, and then they had the ballast mounted 100 feet away in another room, and I couldn't come up with an LED that could handle the environment. Are you running into
Yeah,
applications where you have to go HID, correct?
that's when heat's involved. That's your solution is to go HID.
Does anybody make
We
HID fixtures
still
anymore? Who's making the fixtures?
we still make some.
Hubble
Yeah,
makes them.
we
Yeah,
still make some.
yeah.
Yeah. We buy the ballast from somebody else, so we make the housings and everything else, but we still buy ballast and wait 6 to 8 weeks for the ballast.
Are
So it's
you
not
ready?
like I need some
Are you
Sorry, go
ready?
ahead.
Are you ready for the something that I'm going to say that's going to be very controversial? Ready for this? I was
Yeah.
talking to a guy, and he said he was talking about nothing to do with lighting. He was talking about the space program, and he said,
Mm-hmm.
Russia's the only country that still produces polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs. Okay, and he said that there's lots of hazardous things in the world that we have, but he said that PCBs should be made legal again for these kinds of hazardous environments because it would allow LED technology to be deployed in these high heat environments. So the reason why you can go into a place that's 40 years old and still pull out PCB ballasts that are still working in 2021, like still running T12 lamps,
Right.
is because polychlorinated biphenyls are by far the greatest heat sink or whatever you want to call it that humans have ever created. And all the
Mm-hmm.
space shuttles and the Apollo program was PCB central. It was all over everything at those times. Nuclear missiles have PCBs in them, and it's a very good chemical. And there was an argument for them to say, look, this is not a toxic issue when it comes to deploying it in certain environments. It's a disposal issue. We have to dispose it responsibly. Do you think there's an argument to bring those back for certain applications, or do you think it's better just leaving them illegal forever?
I'd leave them legal forever.
Yeah,
I mean, there's too many environmental issues with them. We have enough environmental issues.
sure.
The electronic waste we're creating just from LED. Think of think of that. There's a lot of electronic waste
What
in there.
electronic waste?
Lots of nasty,
LEDs never burn out,
lots of
Marty.
nasty chemicals.
They're
Lots of
never
nasty chemicals.
LEDs
Yeah,
never
they
burn
never
out,
burn out.
Marty. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's true, I suppose, but I wouldn't necessarily bet on it too heavily.
No.
Keeping them going is always a trouble. I mean, but in most applications and where they've gotten now, I mean, LED is not old technology, for God's sakes. It's, 2005, we're getting like 17 lumens per watt out of LED. Now we're in the couple hundred lumens per watt. And we needed lots of heat sink back then, which we don't need the same kind of heat sinking again nowadays. So it's come a long way in a very short period of time, and it will get better. There are people out there that claim their LEDs can get up to 90 degrees C or 100 degrees C. I don't think so, but um, there are manufacturers claiming that. In practice, from the people that we know that have tried them, they don't last very long. They work for a while, but not long.
Is there
So
any, this is a bigger question with everything with lighting, but is there any penalty for manufacturers lying about their ambient temps, or can they always, claim they tested it in some certain application where they can't ever recreate?
the thing about LEDs is the Department of Energy in the US is trying to, there's lots of programs to monitor that, um, to nail people for false claims. They did a really lousy job with compact fluorescent. So they weren't going to let that get away from them when LED came along. So they've done a lot to police some of the claims, but it's still buyer beware. Lots of people claim lots of things, and life is one of the biggest lies of LED. There is no life test for LED. We can test the LED itself, and we have a guess. And it could last anywhere up from 100,000 hours, which I haven't been around. It hasn't been around that long, up to infinity, and I certainly haven't been around that long either. So um, they can say the LED will last 200,000 hours, and they might be right. We don't know. That's 33 odd years or more. Um, but the driver won't last that long, and we have no measurement for the driver. It doesn't exist yet. The standards don't exist. So whatever manufacturer tells you something about the life of an LED, it's their best guess. There is no magical. This is absolute.
Marty, you said life is one of the biggest lies of LED. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's the extension of all the lies in the lighting industry. Rated average life is just
Yeah.
an extension. I mean, when people say to me, "Oh, it says 5,000 hours on the box," I'm like, "Dude, that's an average. That's a rated average
Yeah.
life." And so I mean, this idea, we put it in a microwave for 20 minutes and it worked. So we're going to project
Yeah.
that to be this or
Yeah.
whatever. It's accelerated testing. They have no idea what they're talking about.
With
Absolutely
traditional
no
lamps,
idea.
they did. With
Yes.
traditional lamps,
Yes,
they
they're
had a
right.
pretty good idea
Yep.
because they stuck
Yeah.
a whole bunch in a room and ran them on and off.
hmm
The only thing that was tricky about that is hours per start.
hmm
That was the tricky part. Compact fluorescents last 10,000 hours at 3 hours per start. You don't use the bathroom fixture for 3 hours. Well, maybe my daughter does, she's in there forever. But somebody goes in the bathroom, they use it for 5 or 10 minutes and they're gone. That life drops below that of incandescent for that fixture. Wonder why it didn't last? It wasn't on for 3 hours. Even regular T8, T12, T5 fluorescents, they were based on 10 hours of start. And the minute you start chopping that out, life goes down.
You know what I find what's interesting about this kind of talk is my career in the lighting industry started in 1999. So I'm 22 years in the
Oh,
game.
okay.
Okay. So I did a lot of T5HO, a lot of T8s.
Yep.
And what I found was that the reliability seemed to go down when they tried to put energy, like tried to mess around with the energy efficiency of T8s, like 25 watt, 4-foot T8s, 49
Yeah.
watt T5, stuff like that. When they tried to reduce the consumption of energy of the individual tubes and stuff like that, or low ballast
Mm-hmm.
factor, and they wouldn't work in the cold. It had to be 20 degrees, or the lights wouldn't come on in a school. Like if you had low ballast factor, low lamp wattage, if they didn't have the
Yeah.
HVAC on, the lights wouldn't come on. They'd be like blinking or whatever. And so there's an optimum set point. And so when we started messing with those optimum set points, we start seeing other problems emerge. LED has never had a set point. There's never been a point where they're like, let's manufacture all these lamps for 15 years and then see what happens. It's been changing and changing. We're on generation 26 of the T8 tube now, Greg. I don't even know what it is anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a rapidly moving target.
Yes. Yes.
And we've got a ways to go yet before we figure out what this is. And then we can get down to making it so my parts fit somebody else's fixture and their parts fit mine. But we're not even there yet. Every design is per manufacturer. We don't have any interchangeability. As we did with, you pick the top 3 ballast manufacturers in North America and they all work on everybody's fixture.
Mm-hmm.
You pick all whatever lamp you want to pick, it's to a standard, then everything fit together.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing LED fits together.
Why is that? Who decided that?
It was the Wild West of who could get better than the others. Somebody wants
No,
to have
but
a
why
better.
why was it like that in the past? Like did Philips, GE, and Sylvania sit down and say, hey, this is how we're going to do it? Or how did that come out? NEMA? Did NEMA set those standards?
Well, it goes back to Mr. Edison perfected the light bulb. He never invented it, but he just perfected it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they set about making it so everybody could use the same lamp. And then they divvied up the world on who would sell lamps where and how long they would last. Incandescent lamps last 1,000 hours. And way back in the 20s, they created the Phoebus cartel. and they divvied up the world, and GE didn't go to Europe, and Europe didn't go to the
Are
Far
we
East.
going conspiracy theory now or what? Because is that legit? Is that from
FIBA,
this? Is that
FIBA's
legit?
cartel, look it up. Yeah, it was
I've
one of the
heard it
I've
first
looked.
before.
cartels.
Tell me about it. Do you know it, Marty?
Well, it's been a while since I had to explain it to anyone, but basically, Swan in the UK and Osram, they all kind of divvied up um, the world as far as who was going to sell what lamps into what markets. And they all agreed that incandescent lamps shouldn't last more than 1,000 hours, planned obsolescence. And they all stayed out of each other's backyard and made a ton selling lamps. And the European lamp has a different base than the North American lamp. So you couldn't actually easily switch them back and forth. Similar bases, but not identical. So
So you're saying
was
this
one
was
of
an
the early
antitrust?
conspiracies.
This was an antitrust action by lamp manufacturers.
Yeah, they got shut down in the 30s for that. In the mid 30s, they got caught and they had to stop the cartel. But it
So
never
that
changed
started.
anything.
So this idea of standardizing things, and then dividing up the
Right.
market so that you could still win without killing each other on price. How did that sort of segue into the ballast case sizes, the length of tubes, all the sorts of things we take for granted as standard nowadays? You know that?
Manufacturers knew there was going to be interchangeability. My lamp's going to sell this week and your lamp's going to sell next week. So with the NEMA, which is just manufacturers writing standards about manufacturers, it's a little bit different than that now. But they decided this is what lamps are going to look like. But it was the manufacturers that decided that. So you had some commonality that I could fit in your product and you could fit in mine. Basically how it worked. So all the lamps have a standard dimension. The diameter is measured in eighths of an inch, and the bases are set number of bases. So a T8 is 1 inch in diameter because it's 8/8. And it's got a certain base, so it fits in anybody's socket.
I've taken LS1. Okay, I know that.
All right, so it's
So
all
listeners
good.
out there,
It's
take
all
notes on
good.
Yeah. So let me throw this at you here. So I would say, Greg, and tell me if you agree. Anyone that retrofitted their system to a traditionally shaped modular T-LED or lamp is way better off long term than somebody who chose a purpose-built light fixture in the last 11 years, Greg. What would you say that's correct?
Yeah, and dealing with the end user and having to find replacements for product that's been discontinued, custom made for that fixture, absolutely. It's a lot easier to get a replacement too.
Yeah, so LEDs do burn out, and so
Yep.
you're better off if you've purchased a modular T-LED or whatever system in a legacy lamp shape. You can just change the light bulb, whether that's bypass or ballast compatible. How do you feel about, you live in Ontario, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel
Yep.
about broad, crude, well, I just gave you my opinion on it, but broad and crude legislation that bans technology types? How do you think that? Do you think that's wise?
I don't like to see them ban technology just for the sake of banning it. We ban things for what we think are good reason, where we're trying to save energy, because that ultimately is good for everybody.
Not Ontario.
Well,
Ontario
not
has too
necessarily.
much energy. Ontario has too much energy.
Yeah, and we sell it to other people.
We pay for them to take it.
In some cases, yes, but to reduce the energy is a good idea. But to ban things, sometimes it doesn't make sense. So if you go back to, we banned mercury vapor ballasts
Mm-hmm.
because they weren't energy efficient enough.
Mm-hmm.
Was really one of the main drivers to do that. But metal halide isn't that much more efficient.
No.
From a ballast perspective. The lamp's a little more efficient, but they don't last nearly as long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we didn't want to ban metal halide, but we banned mercury vapor ballasts. We didn't ban the lamp. We're still selling lamps today, mercury vapor. So what did that solve? Well, it got one thing out of the way and it made us look good to people,
Mm-hmm.
to the energy people, the people who
Sure.
want to save the planet by saving energy. Um, LED was, in its early days, was garbage. It was useless.
What?
It didn't do as well as, and it didn't about as much lumens per watt as incandescent. But the petrochemical companies wanted to buy it. They didn't give a damn about energy, but it was a green light source.
Mm.
And it made them look when the Greenpeace people showed up at the door, they'll say, but look at all our wonderful lighting. Forget all the smoke in the background. But the stuff here is really energy efficient and it's state of the art and we're doing our part for the planet. It was more a message than it was
Virtue
a
signaling.
solution. Yeah.
Stop using LEDs to virtue signal, please, everybody. It's pathetic. Okay, I remember when a CFL was a virtue signal. My first trade show booth had in Ontario had windmills, and I just cringe when I think about it. Oh God, it had windmills and the big sign of my company and a CFL on it and all this stuff. And it's like now you don't want like nobody wants to talk about windmills in Ontario. It's like oh God, more windmills or CFLs. Like,
enough of them.
So these symbols come out, and they what happened? What I want to ask you, like, there's some unintended consequences and some ill effects from banning technology types. I think it would be much better if you did something like M400/U is banned. You could do a lot with that,
Okay.
right? And then you say, well, you need to have MP400. That would be the only one you're allowed to buy, or something like that. I don't know if that's the right answer. Or you could say, we're going to ban. Different segments. But if they ban like incandescent lamps, then you have all these miniature lamps and stuff like that go into machines that you can't buy anymore, and the LEDs don't work when you put them in there. They're too big, they don't fit, or whatever. There's all manner of different consequences. Yeah, they can't take the heat. It's in a plane. It's in this. There's a lot of applications that require incandescent lights, and they can't be upgraded. And so now you're just creating garbage everywhere. You're making garbage.
Yeah. In a funny side story, in Europe they banned certain sizes of incandescent lamps outright. You just can't buy them. So somebody in Germany came up with a radiant heat source that happened to be a light bulb. And they will sell these radiant heat sources because 80% of what comes out of there is heat.
Yeah, sure.
So they can buy that lamp, and it works, happens to give some light. So it was a way around environmental legislation.
So going back to kind of, on the hazardous side of things, did you ever get into induction lighting?
Yes, we did that. When it first came, you had two different types. You had the Osram Octatron, I think it was Octron. I forget. Never used it in the Philips PL system. And the PL was much easier for us to work with. And there's some facilities in Alberta that have 10,000, 15,000 of these fixtures in there. That happened just as Philips was dumping their PL line. And it's a Dutch company that makes the driver, the generator, frequency generator. And somebody else, QL Technology, that makes the lamp. And we started having a huge number of failures because they cheapened everything. Originally, it was pretty good. And they claimed it to be vibration, but it was in a room with no wind and no heat or anything. They were still failing. The components were falling off the board because they weren't in there right. So it was a good technology, difficult to work with on the larger sizes because of the size of the lamp. And
physical
even
dimensions,
the physical dimension of the tubular one, the Osram Sylvania one, it was just too bulky to fit in anything that we had as a manufacturer for hazardous applications. So we wouldn't use that at all. And the 165 watt PL is like a basketball. So finding something that fits in was a challenge.
I got a couple boxes.
I mean, it was great technology.
I got a couple boxes of the QL lamps back there. You want to,
Yeah,
you need them.
keep them.
Trying to sell them.
We're now we did that back, I don't know, in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s. But they're in the process of swapping all of that out for LED
how was
because
the
it's
how was the heat though with induction? I just said I know we're over induction, we're not doing it, but was it good in the heat?
right. It was okay. It would meet our requirements because we were typically 40, 50-degree ambient. So it worked okay. Um, we weren't in a high heat application because we warned them not to use them if you got too high.
Got it.
And we
Oh,
say a 40-degree ambient when we know it's going to climb higher on a hot summer's day in a building that generates heat. So
yeah.
we could get up to
How
the mid
about
40s.
how about controls? Do you guys get into controls at all in your environment, in the hazardous environment?
We have tried that multiple times until they get the bill. They see how much it's going to cost them. They go, no, we'll get a light switch. We'll be okay. So we're not seeing tons of that. We've
Yeah.
worked with a few different companies that had really good systems. Hubble has their own system that we were not able to adapt to suitable for hazardous areas. That may change, or they keep thinking about they'll work on it and get us a hazardous version. And I'm optimistic that we'll finally come up with a solution. But we have pushed that. One of the other things that you guys talk about on some of your podcasts is dark skies, right? So dark skies
Yeah.
is important. In the hazardous world, our ability to control the light was very, very limited because that was a secondary consideration. Hell, lighting itself is a secondary. You're building an oil sands facility, for example. It's going to cost you $8 billion. The lighting system is going to be maybe 2 million. You really think they give a damn about the lighting system? We'll save you money on an $8 billion project and your 2 million of it, go away. So
Right.
there's never any getting them excited about lighting. We've managed to do that over the years. A few of us that have concentrated on doing that have managed to get them to actually think about it. And now they're starting to think, we have some dark skies issues because we're close to environmentally sensitive areas. And that's becoming more important to us. It's easy to do with LED.
For sure.
Wasn't easy to do with HID. Certainly not our kind of fixtures.
No.
Lighting
I,
in petrochemicals is the bastard child. Nobody even want to talk about it.
when I was, I went to a
Sorry.
mine in northern Alberta, a coal mine,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and so I was talking to them about their lighting, and then we were talking
Grand
about.
Cache.
No, I could. I'm not going to say
Okay.
the name of the mine.
Okay.
And like you're talking, people would have their minds blown if they saw something like this. Like most people have never seen these kinds of oil sands, massive natural resource extraction. If people saw it, it's like Mordor. Okay, it's like in the movie The Lord of the Rings. So there's this one giant building where they actually crush the coal up and turn it into the powder. It's coking coal, okay, for making steel.
Mm-hmm.
And it all
Yeah.
goes to Japan, by the way. Everything that comes out of this mine goes to Japan. Or at least that's what I was told. So anyway, when they start crushing, there's all high pressure sodium through this facility. When they start crushing up this chunks of rock, okay, the entire building starts to rattle back and forth like this, okay? And the vibration, like literally the stairwell you're on is going, you're not on the stairs anymore, but like you're standing there, you watch, and then the whole thing starts to fill up with water. The whole bottom of the thing starts to fill up with water, okay? There's no chance that an LED fixture would work in that environment. Absolutely no chance.
HID has issues in those.
Yes.
HID has issues on those. We had a conveyor for oil sands, and on the conveyor, the vibration was so high that the lamps wouldn't last. And then the mounts for the hold the ballast in place. You get metal fatigue on those too, and next thing the
Sure.
ballast would be rattling around inside. And we tried to switch them to something else, different. It's still an HID, but the sockets disintegrated. The porcelain just shattered
Yeah.
on them. We had that much vibration. And then we switched to induction and the problem went away
Hmm.
because they could take that vibration until Phillips sold the business to those other guys and then nothing worked. But also on the rock crushers where they, you bring out all the oil sands material and you've got large boulders in amongst it. On the crushers, we'd see fixtures that are just hanging by wires because the whole mount failed. There's that much vibration. So it depends on your environment. And it doesn't matter what you pick. In some environments, it's going to be constant maintenance. But
So I
where the
think
coal
you're
was probably hazardous.
Yeah, they couldn't have sparks. They couldn't. There was all manner of things, and they're like, we just don't
Yeah.
want to be changing
No
light
aluminum.
bulbs. We don't want to have light bulbs every day and changing light bulbs all the time, right? We don't care what the energy
Yeah.
cost is or whatever. We just want to stop changing light bulbs all the time in this place.
Yeah.
And man, I never said like that blew me away. Absolutely, like people, they should take kids to see that stuff. Like people should see, everyone should see an abattoir in their life. Like the
Oh,
one
no,
thing
they
about
shouldn't.
lighting, the one thing about lighting is that, Greg, you go to every facility and you're looking at everything and you see all manner of craziness. Natural resource extraction, slaughterhouses. These things. People should see what actually happens in a chicken farm. Like you should go there.
Yeah, they're not fun. They're not fun places.
Chicken
Been to those.
farms, chicken. No,
Yeah.
like I don't think it's bad. I just think that most people have no idea where they're. Like you think about it, I'm gonna order some wings. That's 12 birds, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're eating 12 birds there, bud.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you might have answered the question here, Marty, but if it's a new location, a new hazardous location, what are you going to specify for the fixture? I know the answer might be it depends, but in general, what are you guys doing right now for new?
As long as it's a normal, acceptable ambient temperature, we're going to specify LED. Largely because what the user wants. The user now believes they need LED.
Mm-hmm.
It's only if there's conditions that are unique, heat, vibration, what else will come into play? Certain chemicals, maybe, that we would look to an alternate source. We don't. Actually, it was a couple of years ago. Somebody asked me to come in and talk to them about HID lighting, and it was like, oh, shoot, I don't even have a presentation for that anymore. I have to rewrite one to make it work because we haven't talked about it for so long. Early on, we talked about it's not time to look at LED because it wasn't ready back in the early 2000s. Don't even think about it. It's a dumb idea. To now where it's what we would recommend.
And
And
when
then we
you
get
are
into,
recommending, oh, sorry,
go
when you
ahead.
are recommending HID, what is it? Is it high pressure sodium or metal halide?
Usually high pressure sodium.
Yeah.
And the only reason for that is the lamp life.
Huh.
We don't like the color of high pressure sodium, although some people think it works better in steam. So it doesn't look, there's less glare off the yellow light than there is off the white light. So in a steam environment, some users like that better. And then there's other users that think the yellow light looks more like flame. So somewhere in between, you have to try to keep them all happy. But mostly it's very rare we come up with a metal halide system, unless they want it. We would still be pushing them to LED.
And
And
have
then
you
all the
run
things that
into,
work in your, sorry,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I
was
was
gonna
just
say,
saying,
the-
have you run
We're
into
doing-
issues with the LED and warranties in these environments? I'm assuming there has been some, but has it been more so than others?
We've been fortunate. We haven't had tons of warranty issues. We've had some, of course. Some are the user's fault. We had a facility in Southern Ontario where they had it was a flour mill where they had we retrofitted all the lighting to LED and they burnt them all out. And we thought it was dirty power and we did a power study to see if that would have done it because we had no explanation. And I went down there on a July afternoon, and it was hot, but it wasn't screaming hot. And as we were walking down from the 8th floor, the guy said, "Well, it never gets that hot in here till we do bug control. And then we bring in big heaters and run the place up to about 60 degrees Celsius. And your fixture's rated at 40. So we understand why that happens."
Yeah.
So if we know anything like that's going on, we'll caution. But other than that, I mean, there's people out there that offer 10-year warranties, which none of the tests justify a 10-year warranty. There's no test done that justifies a 10-year
That's just
warranty.
marketing.
It is. It's lies, basically.
Yeah.
So ours is a
marketing.
5-year, and
That's what marketing is.
We've done. That's right.
Sorry, I'm just
Smoke
joking.
and mirrors and lies. That's how it works. Absolutely.
That's selling the sizzle. I mean, come on, 10-year warranty.
Yeah.
I give out 10-year warranties, but what I do now to compete is I'll only do it with modular fixtures, and I'll just say that in 10 years you get one free lamp replacement included in the project, and that's
you
that's
sell
10-year
fixtures where you
warranty.
can change the lamp.
Yeah, always. It's whenever I can, I do that because
Yeah.
we've been in business for 43 years. We've been in business for 380,000 hours. I know what this is all about. This is, I got an email from a major manufacturer years ago. I was in the midst of like a huge problem with T5s going all purple. The T5s were turning purple. They weren't, so that's mercury starvation or whatever. There isn't enough mercury in there. So it turns purple. And I had 3 jobs. You're talking like 20,000 lamps, all turning purple. Okay. And I get an email from this manufacturer saying, "We now have a 50,000 hour T5. I'm like, "What? Why don't you make one that lasts 25,000 hours first? We'll start from there." Because
Non-purple ones.
Yeah, that don't turn purple after 3 weeks. And this was everywhere. It wasn't just like a bad badge. Anyway, Marty Cole.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a guest on the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. And if you've
All
made
right,
it to
thanks
the
for having
end,
me.
yeah, no problem, brother. I love talking about legacy technology because we're a dying breed. There's not a lot of us like everybody's 40 or 35. If you're 35 and you know about legacy technology, you're going to be the last man standing.
You're doing well.
Yeah.
That's right.
Folks, we got to tell you about
That's
our
right.
friends, though, over at Keystone Technologies. You got to go to KEYSTONETECH.com. A lot of history in the lighting industry, Greg, going back to the Second World War.
That's right. Started as a ballast company, actually, and morphed into what they are today, LED focused, but still have those traditional ballasts that you need. So if you need fluorescent HID ballast, Keystone's got it for you.
The people that are the best in this industry are the ones that were around before the LED boom. That's right. That's what we believe here at Get a Grip on Lighting. Yeah, we know it. We know what's right. And folks, we got to talk to you a little bit about the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. That's NAILD.org. I don't know if we're taking any new members anymore. I'm sick of you guys. Got to join. And if you made it to the end here, I know I speak on behalf of Greg and Marty when we say nothing but love for all you people out there listening and Get a Grip on Lighting. Thank you. And, yeah, enjoy the rest of your week. Peace. Yeah.
Thanks.